Okay, I think we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Geraldine Parent, Executive Director of the Okanagan Symphony. It's my pleasure to welcome you here again to Maestros Musings. This is the second of our 4 series, kind of a bit of a digital pivot for us, and one we really enjoyed starting and creating for you. We've advertised this as a 30-minute conversation, but if you joined us last month, you'll know that we kind of went over that a little bit based on the stories and many of the questions. And so if you do need to leave to get back to work or something else, we are recording this session, and so you'll be able to view it and pick it up where you might have left off. So please stay as long as you can, and we'll be mindful of the time as well. But if the stories are fantastic, we just don't want to cut them off as we're going along. So just a few housekeeping items as we get started. I want to remind you to please keep your microphones on mute. Your video can remain on, but if you're having any issues with the video, it's, sometimes that happens on Zoom, best to turn off your video. It seems to help. So there's that. If you want to pose a question or you have a comment, please put it in our chat room, and we're going to look to those closer to the end of our session. Additionally, typically in the top right-hand corner of your Zoom, you have the option to change your view. And so you might want to look at a screen view. It might also appear under the word more. And so, speaker view is likely the view you want, and it'll hone in on both Daniel and Rosemary as we move along. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rosemary to get this conversation started. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Geraldine, and welcome everyone. It's so lovely to see all your smiling faces, and especially lovely to see Daniel's smiling face, a face I've known for many years. And so it's my pleasure to welcome Daniel Bartholomew-Poyser to our Maestros Musings today. And I want to let you know a little bit about Daniel. He is originally from Calgary, Alberta, where he went to the University of Calgary and then pursued conducting studies at the Royal Northern College in Manchester, England. Since then, Daniel has enjoyed a very flourishing conducting career as associate conductor with the Kitchener-Waterloo Symphony and the Thunder Bay Symphony, artist in residence and a community ambassador for both Symphony Nova Scotia, and the education conductor and community ambassador for the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, both positions he holds currently. Daniel has guest conducted across the country with major orchestras, as well as in San Francisco Symphony and the Washington National Opera. And he also holds a board of directors position at Orchestras Canada, our national association, and a very important position as the chair of the Equity Committee. And I know that Daniel is really at the forefront of so much of that work, and we will discuss that today. He was recently the subject of a documentary called Disruptor Conductor, where I'm just so inspired by the work that Daniel is doing in our industry and really moving our industry from a very traditional colonial one into something that can be celebrated worldwide. So welcome, Daniel. And I'm going to start by asking you to tell us, what do you love about being a conductor?
Hi, Rose. Hi, everybody. Hi. Thank you so much for having me here today. There's lots of stuff I love about being a conductor. I love being able to travel. One of my dreams as a kid was being an airline pilot. I wanted to fly. Uh-huh. It's very specific. I was an air cadet. So I got my pilot's license, and I wanted to fly 767s for Air Canada. That was my other dream job. 767s, and now instead of flying 767s for Air Canada, I fly on 767s from Toronto to Halifax. Actually, they retired them in the pandemic, for those of you that are aviation nerds like myself. But I fly from Toronto to Mi'kma'ki, which is where I am, the unceded ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people here in Chiboucto or Halifax. I go back and forth now, so I love the travel of it. But obviously, what do I love about the music? People often ask, what's it like being a conductor? Mm-hmm. And I just say, you know how it looks like you're just up there having this incredible experience and it's so much fun and you're just like engaged and all this? And they go, yeah. And I say, it's like that except 10 times better. It really is. It really is. It's really hard. And there's so many things that are difficult about it. But what is interesting is that the experience of making the music with professional musicians in the moment far supersedes the difficulties of becoming a conductor and staying a conductor, which is a really important part of the job. So I love the travel. It has nothing to do with actual music. I love the intimacy of making music with professional musicians. And I especially love being in the moment. If you play a sport, or actually it won't even be a sport, but anything where you just like lose track of time and you're just totally alive and just in a state of total response. I think of squash. I'm a terrible, I'm not terrible. I'm an okay squash player, but it's one of those things where you're just reacting. You're not thinking. You're just directly responding and reacting in the moment. And it's just incredible. And I think all of us as people access those moments in different ways. For some people, it's orchestral music. For others, maybe it's working with animals. Others, it's, working on a math problem. Others, it's apparently football even, which is, it's a mystery, a complete mystery. But that is what it is for me. So I'll try and keep my answer short. I can go on.
No, I love the anime. Yeah. And so I've known Daniel for a long time, because when I was the resident conductor in Calgary at the Calgary Philharmonic, Daniel was, I think he was still a student teacher at that time. And I was thinking about this yesterday. My first guest on this series was Bramwell Tovey, and his instrumental training was on the euphonium and the tuba. And what is your instrument that you play, Daniel?
Tuba. I'm a tuba player as well too. I'm a tuba player first, and then a cello player second. And just a cello is more, I don't perform on cello. I have it for my score study and for my own personal enjoyment. And then being a band teacher, I was a band teacher for 10 years. I taught at a school in Southwest Calgary, Glenmore Christian Academy, for 9 years approximately. You also just learn all the wind instruments as a band teacher. So, and again, not to perform on, but to be able to get around on flute, get around on clarinet, which I love. Bassoon, no. Come on, too many thumb keys. Come on. Anyways, that's another podcast. A little bit of oboe here and there, but tuba and cello are my main instruments. And Bramwell, it's funny, when I was in high school, I participated in the National Youth Band of Canada, and Bramwell Tovey was the first conductor. And I remember asking him about the chaconne. He mentioned something in rehearsal about the first suite of Gustav Holst, and how Holst, halfway through the movement, which is a chaconne, where there's the bass line that just repeats over and over again. He said he inverts it. And I asked him, I went up to Bramwell Tovey and I said, what does it mean when something's inverted? And it's the first time I was ever hearing of this. And Bramwell Tovey explained it to me. So he was one of my musical heroes, growing up. And then he was also there when I did the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra audition and didn't win. Thanks, Bramwell. It was like high school beautiful memories. I try to but he was there for that as well too. And actually, it's fine. Like, it's really funny because there's another contestant there who also didn't win, and now we're all conducting it. So conducting is so much more about fit than winning an audition. Yeah, it's really kind of like going on a date, or it's
trying
like
it on.
Just trying it on. Does this orchestra fit? So I
absolutely agree with that. And to borrow your sports analogies, it really, I coach students, or and other singers, or whoever I'm coaching or teaching. A career in music is really about a marathon and not about the sprint, right? And so if you have to put yourself out there for many, many different opportunities. And I think you're absolutely right that it is the one that is the best fit for you, where it's just going to happen. So can I share the story about you and the Calgary Philharmonic with me? Please. Or would you like to tell it? Well, why don't you tell it? Why don't you tell it? I want to hear it from your perspective.
I think I should tell. Like, we'll both tell. Okay. I was a teacher at this school, and one of my students had a father who worked at some company, and they had an auction, and he had somehow won the opportunity to conduct the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra for a day. So you have to imagine me now. This was in my fourth year of teaching. So I was probably like
early. Yeah, you're pretty new, I remember.
Pretty new. My fourth year of teaching. And I was trying to go off for a master's. You know, I just had my bachelor of music and I wanted to be a conductor. So at that point, I'd never been in front of a big orchestra or anything like that. And he came up to me and he said, Mr. Tedham was his name. And he said, Dan, do you want this? Just like, here's the ticket to the CPO. And I almost cried. I just couldn't believe it because, and it's hard now that I'm a conductor and people see me as a conductor. You have to imagine that I was a junior high school band teacher all that time, helping kids put together clarinets, like no left hand on top at 7 o'clock in the morning, right? That was my reality. You know, flutes playing loud, like really just not even conducting, but just it's all classroom management. So to think that I would get to conduct the Calgary Philharmonic even once, because there's no real path for conducting. You can do everything right and still not be a conductor, right? And you can do everything wrong and you also won't be a conductor. So it's so it was huge. So anyways, he gave it to me. They transferred it over, and they said there's a conductor called Rosemary Thomson is the assistant conductor, and I'll hand the story over to you now, and you can tell me from your perspective what happened next.
Well, so I got to do 3 lessons with Daniel. And normally when we do these kinds of auctions, I mean, it's a fun thing, and it's a huge experience for somebody to get up in front of the orchestra and feel what all that sound feels like. But normally I give them something very simple, like a march, where they just have to go 1, 2, 1, 2, and sometimes people go 1, 2, 1, 2, and they're backwards and upside down. It doesn't really matter because the orchestra will just play and give them this wonderful experience. But when I met Daniel, and I said, "Oh, you're a real conductor. You have all this training, you're a musician." So I gave him the Storm movement, the 4th movement from Beethoven's 6th Symphony, which is a lot more than just going 1, 2, 1, 2. And he conducted it in the Heritage Park concert, I think it was.
That's right.
And did just such a great job. And so I was able to carve out more rehearsal time for him as well, because it was wonderful to see you really shine. You didn't need me at all. You were just in your element. And I'd forgotten that I said this to you, but I was very touched. A couple of years ago, we had the opportunity of having lunch together at an Orchestras Canada conference.
That's right.
And you said to me that I told you you had a lot of affinity and that you should pursue this. And so I'm glad that I was encouraging, because look what you're doing now. So I feel like I was very lucky to have a very special part and small part in the beginning of that journey for you.
It was really important, Rose, because, you know, as a young person, and I was telling this story the other day, you know, I was at, if any of you know Calgary, which many of you might know Calgary, Crowfoot Circle, the Boston Pizza in Crowfoot Circle. You go in, you go left, and you go up a couple stairs. I could take you to the table where I was sitting beside my friend Keith, and I said, for the first time, I vocalized, you know, I'm kind of thinking about being a conductor. And I really looked up to Keith, and Keith just looked over me and said, "Oh yeah, you'd be great. You have great stage presence. You'd be great at that. You should do it." Yeah. And at that moment, I was like, "Oh, I can do this." If he had said, you know, and what if he had said something else, right? Same thing with you, Rose. I was at, and this is what you need to know about Rose, right? I could have just been given, you know, a little march or even like a Strauss polka or whatever, but it was real Beethoven. And we did 3 real lessons, which I remember, that you carved the time out for. And then to say, yeah, you're cut out for this, you know, to a junior high school band teacher who was just, and then I got on a plane to do my master's after that. I've held on to that, because you need sometimes, you know, all of us are in positions where we have young people that are around us, whether it's, you know, nieces, nephews, foster kids, adoptive kids, or just, you know, kids on the street, and you don't know what a word at the right time will do. And this is the same thing with Elgar, right? You know, with the Nimrod variation, where it was his friend Augustus Jaeger who said, no, there's something to the extent of, you know, there's much music left in you at this point.
Right.
Nadezhda von Meck with Tchaikovsky, who imagine needed much encouragement all along the way. Even Rachmaninoff had a terrible time, which is like, I can't imagine like anybody not, like, how could he, who's just complete, you know? So it's really important, and I think especially in our industry, and this is one way I think we do need to move the industry forward, is thinking about mental health and anxiety and the pressures that we're under and how we can support each other as musicians. It's something when I'm speaking with universities and youth orchestras and, you know, and National Youth Band and stuff like that, I tell them, you know, look at all the faces on the call. These are your colleagues, not just for now. These are your colleagues for the next 50 years if you're in music. We're all going to be doing this together. So we are a musical family. I mean, Rose, that was like, what, you know, 5-10 years ago?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, something like that, right? And here we are.
Yeah.
right? So we are all, as orchestral musicians, responsible for this thing and giving great music to Canada, and responsible also for the well-being of each other as we journey through that. And you are a great example of that. So Rose was very, very, you just, and I feel like Okanagan something like you need to know that the one, and sorry, now it's my turn,
I was
Rose.
gonna say, wait, this interview is about you.
Yeah. No. Returns around, but it's like, but it is authentic. The wonderful person that Rose is, and that's from I think not quite 20 years ago or so, but
Yeah,
it's authentic and it's consistent and there's integrity there. So thank you, Rose, for that.
well, you are so welcome, and I've just been thrilled to watch your career go from strength to strength, Daniel. But also, as you were talking about the mental health of our students that we work with, and our audiences and our communities that we're sharing music with, and how important that is to the health of our communities. And you really are at the forefront of thinking beyond the traditions of what orchestra have been and what people tend to think of them as. So I want to ask you, um, I think the first project I heard about that you were doing was the special concert for kids on the autism spectrum with the Toronto Symphony. And I have a kid who's on the autism spectrum, and so there was a real interest, obviously personally for me, but also just an understanding of what that could mean for families who might not be able to bring their kids to a concert like that. So can you just take oh, sorry, dog. I'm going to mute myself while Daniel tells us a little bit about how you moved, where you got the inspiration, or how you were able to take an orchestra like the Toronto Symphony and the other orchestras that you work with into a way of doing things that is more inclusive. I know it's a big topic and a passion of yours and of mine. So I just would love to hear a little bit about that journey at the beginning of moving into that way of doing things. And
Sure. Sure, no problem. So one of the joys of the COVID time has been getting to know people's animals on Zoom calls, because I don't have pets. So it's great to meet other people's through Zoom. So that's wonderful. So that journey, specifically the autism spectrum journey, began with Thunder Bay Symphony Orchestra with Chris Wilkinson, who's now the manager of Symphony Nova Scotia. And he contacted Autism Thunder Bay and was asking, would it be possible to do something? And when I heard about it, I was very, very excited. And it was a good fit because I had, when I was growing up, well, not growing up, but I guess in university, a very, very close friend of mine, Ashley Yule, is a psychologist who worked with young people on the autism spectrum. And in particular, she worked with one young fellow over the course of 5-6 years. So within the boundaries of patient-client privacy, she was able to discuss their life. And not as a patient, but just say, oh, Timmy is now, he talks about trains, and now he's talking about bigger trains, now he's drawing trains. So very, very naturally, it was as if I had a friend who had a child with autism, and it was just part of, so I was learning all these things, but didn't realize I was learning. So when somebody said, do you want to do a concert for kids on the autism? Of course. And not just for the young people, but for the parents. It's for the parents, because if you can help the parents, then they can also help the children, right? So what is it like to be a parent who feels this totally unnecessary shame? If I go to a concert, will I be looked down upon if my child begins to stim, or if my child needs something for self-regulation, or if at the very, very end of, a Mozart slow movement or something, my child needs to go right now, and I know I have only 30 seconds to get them out before they can't contain the excitement that they're feeling, and it comes out in a way that's unrecognizable to people who've never experienced it. What does that parent do? No, we have a concert where you can bring your child and you can feel great about it. And I think, maybe one of the most important things I've ever said at a concert is the following: if your child makes a vocalization, we encourage you to make the vocalization along with the child. Make it twice as loud. It's great, because music is for people. Music is for people. People aren't for music, right? So for me, at the end of it, when we did the concert with the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, and Rosie will appreciate this, we had, actually, I'll just tell the story. There's two Dans, right? Let's go back a little bit. There's two Dans. There's the Dan who plans the concert, and then there's the Dan who has to actually conduct the concert.
Yeah.
And these two people don't talk quite enough sometimes. As I just discovered, I'm doing a concert for Kitchener, concert about music and math. I put 12 pieces on. Rose, I'll send you the program. It's great. There's a piece about like silence and zero and like Fibonacci series and like 1 to 12.
Brain.
And we have, and I just looked at it. We have 12 pieces about one rehearsal. What am I doing? Anyways, we're doing a concert called Let's Dance. And I wanted to have all different sorts of music, of dance music on this concert. It's my first concert with the TSO. I wanted to have music of Russian dance and Indian dance and hip hop, but there's no hip hop pieces. So I called my cousin who works with the Roots on Jimmy Fallon's show.
Yeah.
Piece together, and then there's no African classical music. So I'm like, well, I'm going to take an African folk song. I'm going to arrange it for the orchestra. There, we got that. But then also I wanted to have some, British dance or some English dance because there's going to be lots of like British and like, Celtic-based kids in the audience. I don't want them to feel disenfranchised, and I don't want it to just look like, oh, look at all the like, BIPOC people dancing, because there are Anglo-Saxon dance. We're going to have everybody on stage dancing. Great, fantastic, lots and lots of fun. And then it's like, wait. For my first concert with the TSO, I'm writing a piece, and so they're going to be evaluating me as a conductor, a speaker, an arranger, and a composer. And if there's any mistakes, I'm going to be sunk. And then they said, "Oh, we want to do a concert for kids on the autism spectrum." Fantastic, let's do it. I was like, "Yeah, we have to." I'm all over that. So they were like, "Great, fantastic, we're going to do it." Oh, now what we're going to do is take the last half of the rehearsal. And this is actually really good. Instead of having a 2.5-hour rehearsal, we're just going to have a 75-minute rehearsal. We're going to take that last hour, right? Take that last hour and have Rachel Marks, who's an autism specialist, come in. So 2 things. That's an actual terror, because now the pressure for me as the conductor, composer, arranger, all that had to happen in 75 minutes, right. Which was, the anxiety leading up to it, right?
Yeah, I know that anxiety.
That all went well, but the most important part was that usually what happens in orchestra, and this is kind of how things are shifting now, is we say, okay, young people on the spectrum, you can come to our concert, and parents, you can come and listen to our Mozart and come to the hall, and basically it's like, come over to our house, here are the rules, here's how we do things here, right? This time what we said is, okay, you're coming to us, we're also going to take some time and train the orchestra to work with you. So, dear orchestra member, when you are playing your pianist, it's lasted so long, and you see somebody out in the audience and they are stimming or moving or they're vocalizing, they're not just crying. They might actually be thinking in their head, when I heard Jean-Pierre Rampal, I remember there's a little bit more vibrato at the end of that. But to us, it sounds like a vocalization we don't understand. They might be thinking, when I heard Bernstein do this, it was a little bit faster, the trumpets were a little bit louder, but I like what we did with the timpani. But to us, it comes out as just movement or a movement of the head. Right. So now the orchestra is prepared for what's happening in the audience.
So they had a specialist actually speaking with the orchestral musicians to
1 hour of rehearsal. It was half music, and we took that service, and Rachel Marks came in and said, this is what this means, all that stuff.
And how did that go over with the orchestra? Like, did the players, do they appreciate that? Or they have questions?
So much. Musicians love to learn. Musicians, we love, like, this is, we just love to learn. So they were just eyes wide open. There were parents in the actual orchestra who have young people on the spectrum. So I can't remember which parents those were. I hope that they felt validated by that. Mm-hmm. And what was the beautiful moment was when a young person actually got up on stage and started dancing. And you just saw the eyes. You know how musicians are, right? Like watching music, and you see people look at their music, and you just see this happen. Right? So you can tell they're not looking at the person. You just see the eyebrows, and everybody's eyebrows are up. And you could rightly say, like, well, the concert's called Let's Dance. So the person's like, well, you call the concert Let's Dance. So I'm dancing. Why are you going to call it Let's Dance if I'm not allowed to dance?
So has this become a regular part of the TSO programming now?
Yes. Every year we are committed to having a concert for young people on the spectrum. And my hope, if nothing else comes of my career, if part of it is that I was part of the team, because it wasn't just me, right? Marty McDonald did concerts for kids on the autism spectrum in Symphony Nova Scotia before I did. But if I can help be part of that team that really popularizes it and makes it not even popular, but just totally, of course we have that. Of course we do Beethoven. Of course we do concerts for young people on the spectrum and concerts then I would be very happy with that.
So let's move into Disruptor Conductor. So this is the name of the documentary that was made in 2019, right?
That's right.
when I'm thinking historically about the shifts that we've seen in the world just in the past year, obviously COVID, blah, but more, to me, in a way, more long lasting is the Black Lives Matter response and the shifting ground that everyone is looking at in terms of being more inclusive. And what does that really mean? And I do want to say that I neglected to say that we are on the land of the unceded traditional and ancestral land of the Syilx people of the Okanagan Valley, and so grateful to be here. And that is all part of this shift that the world is making, and that we who work in this tradition of orchestral music that is has a very colonial history, a beautiful artistic tradition. But when you look at the history of orchestra and how it developed and how it has continually been shifting and continually being influenced by other cultures other than the European one which it started. So this is a huge area, Daniel, and you're really at the forefront. I'm so excited by the imagination that you're bringing to it. So can you share a little bit with us about how the documentary came to be, and also make sure we have a way that everybody knows where they can go and see it? But I know it's won some awards as well, and just what you think the distillation of the messaging is. Like what is it? What really means the most to you about the story that it tells? As a reflection of the work that you're doing, and that we can all be doing more purposefully, right? As we shift the tradition of orchestra.
Right.
That was a long-winded question, but I think you got what I mean.
It makes sense. The documentary, it's called Disruptor Conductor. It's available on CBC Gem, and it's available and you can watch it. There's also, if you want, there's a watch party guide available on the Toronto Symphony Orchestra website, and I can send that to you afterwards.
Yeah, send us those links and we'll forward them on to everybody.
Yeah, I'll send those links.
Great.
But basically, how would I put it? As a conductor, my mom is from Trinidad, my dad is from Jamaica. So I wanted to do a concert for young people, and having been a teacher, I know that you basically have 30 seconds before you lose them and you don't get them back. And if we're doing a concert about dance music, or we're doing a concert that's about rhythm or melody, why don't we do a piece of reggae? It's totally natural to me, because growing up with parents from Trinidad, Trinidad was it's a colony of Britain. So my mom grew up listening to Bach and reggae and Handel and like all the Bach, Beethoven, Brahms plus reggae plus calypso. So I grew up like that as well too. So it wasn't ever strange for me. So I would just arrange a piece of reggae or calypso, put it on the program. Then I already told you the story about Ashley and the young person on the autism spectrum. And then my own journey in terms of being a member of the LGBTQ 2S plus community, but really, really struggling with that as a result of the faith community that I was part of, that I still am sort of part of. And that the faith community that is not was, but is still so beautiful to me, even though it was very difficult to be part of when I was, so there's still that tension, and I don't disavow or cancel my faith community because of problems and troubles that I had, which in itself could be problematic for some people to hear. That was also part of my life, right? And then finally, just being, so hold on, I have to go over so the autism, the Black, the LGBTQ. And then working with the prison populations. As a teacher, part of my teaching at the University of Calgary was they put us into alternative teaching areas where we would learn that education was more than just the classroom. There were other agencies in the world that needed people who could teach. So I was with the John Howard Society, which was all about prison reform. So basically, there's an author called C.S. Lewis, who wrote Narnia, and he said that when you put the first things first, the second things will come in line. So the first thing for me, I was just doing what I did. I was just like, oh, let's do a concert at prison. I'm not intimidated by that. It'd be great for the prisoners to hear that. Oh, let's have some reggae. But then from the outside, Sharon Lewis, who's the producer, from the outside, looks at that and says, you're doing all this weird stuff. So I wasn't aware that it was different, really, until somebody kind of put it all together. So now it's exactly what Rose said. It's like, oh, this is special. There is stuff here. And I'm so happy, that Rose, we started this journey. That was like 15 years ago, right? So I will say this. I'm still, and I do really mean we. I do really mean we, right? We started this journey 10 years ago, just in time for everything that's happening now, so that we're not totally behind. But Kitchener, Toronto, Symphony Nova Scotia, we had already begun the work of trying to put these things together. So now we can be really firing on all cylinders. So that's kind. Does that answer a little bit? It's kind of
it does for sure. And I'm going to dive into a couple of other things for you. But I remember, Dan, when I was a student at U of T, so that goes a long time ago. And I was just getting interested in conducting. And I was at a conference as a student. It might have been orchestras, I can't remember. But John Brotman, who was with the Ontario Arts Council, who had great words of wisdom to say, he really impressed on me the importance of being relevant to your community, that is what makes an orchestra alive and well and thriving in our current time, not just living in a past tradition. And it doesn't mean that we ignore our past traditions. It means we share them in a different way. So that was already very much in my forefront. And I can't remember the woman's name, but I do remember having my eyes really opened at a session where there was a woman, a Black woman from, I can't remember what profession, but she was the guest speaker, and she was talking about diversity on the stage, in the boardroom, on your staff. And it was a real eye-opener for me. And I just want to share with you, because I don't think I told you this. I'm not sure I knew that one of your parents was from Trinidad, but I grew up in St. Catharines, Ontario, just down the road from where you are now. And my parents were they were members of something called the Twinning Association, because St. Catharines, Ontario is twin cities with Port of Spain, Trinidad.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so every year we had people that billeted at our house that came from Trinidad. Hey. They came up to the Niagara region for the Grape and Wine Festival. So as you were talking about the Calypso tradition, and we had dancers stay with us and steel drum players stay with us. And it was a huge part of my upbringing. We looked forward to it every year, having this shared culture and learning about the food and about the music. And so that's lovely. I didn't realize that Trinidad was part of your heritage.
And I didn't realize that you were used to hosting and billeting and cooking for Trinidadians.
Exactly. So come on down to Kelowna, Dan.
You've all heard it.
We were in discussion before COVID hit about Dan coming to guest conduct, and we will bring that back again. So maybe you stay with me when you come, not no,
absolutely.
That would be fun. At least one dinner party anyway. Right. But so can you talk a little bit about how your show came to be with Thorgy Thor? And just tell us, maybe not all our listeners will know who Thorgy Thor is, and this is someone we really want to bring to the Okanagan with you. So just give us a bit of that.
So Thorgy Thor is a United States drag queen from RuPaul's Drag Race. She is his name is Shane Galligan, and his middle name is Thor. So his friends would always call him Thor G, and G for Galligan, hence Thorgy. So Thorgy Thor. Very, very tall, wonderful person. Plays viola, violin, and cello professionally, in addition to being a drag queen. And one of the things that's interesting about being a drag queen is that, like, men who perform in drag are some of the only men who understand some of what it is to be a woman in terms of the preparation that's expected and the demands put on appearance. And so talking to him about that aspect of it, and their, like, a not total understanding by any means, but it's a really, really interesting part of LGBTQ culture. These men who have a feminine side that they bring to life, a different part of the personality. So that show came to life when someone said, Dan, do you think this is a possibility? What would a show with a drag queen look like? And it was one of those moments for me where everything just went like 10 seconds, and I thought, yep, that absolutely can work, and I can already see it. So Thorgy bringing the drag, the entertainment, because people will come just for Thorgy. But then if you take a Western Canadian model of WestJet, right, where when WestJet first started out, which was based on Southwest Airlines, right, you get people on board for $50, but then you give them a little bit extra, so they feel like, wow, the flight was cheap, but I got jokes, I was expecting nothing, but I got so much more. So that's actually a really interesting business model. I am an airline nerd, so there's always
I was going to say, nice circle back.
yeah. But it's but it's real, right? So people are coming for who? For Thorgy Thor. You'll fill a hall with Thorgy Thor, but they come for Thorgy and they get orchestra, they get modern LGBTQ classics, they get modern pop music, they get classical music, real classical. They get Thorgy talking, they get a game show, they get a dance off, they get video stuff, they get LGBTQ Canadian history, they get happy moments, sad moments. You're hitting all these different things, and that's the show. So people leave feeling like, wow, I got so much more than I bargained for. I want to become a subscriber. you know, but that was the idea for the show. So and Thorgy's wonderful. We get along
Well,
so.
I can't wait till we can open up and have you guys back on our stage. And I know that we're getting close to the end of our time. I see that Megan Williams, our wonderful principal bass player, has put the link to Daniel's documentary, Disruptor Conductor, in the chat. And we'll also, you can follow up with us if you're not able to access it. Daniel, can you just tell me what you're excited about, COVID notwithstanding, about the next 10 years of our orchestra traditions, of you conducting and being part of, this equity committee for Orchestras Canada, having these new roles at both regional orchestras like Symphony Nova Scotia, but also one of our biggest orchestra in the country, at the Toronto Symphony. Where do you put your priority of your passion as you are in this position to make change in our industry? Just give us a little summation.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that my priority always has to be being a good. Whoops! Dropped my phone. My priority always has to be being a good conductor and being a good musician first. So imagine if I switch this and. I'm not purposefully talking about airplanes all the time, but this is actually how I think.
We never get to get on them right now.
I relate things to because I love aviation, but imagine that I wasn't that I was doing this, but as an Air Canada pilot. So it's like, okay, what's the most important thing? Well, the most important thing is safe takeoffs and landings, right? So I can talk about being a pilot. It's like, that's great, but you actually do have to do the job as well too. Everything else comes from that. So the difficulty, I'll say, like, the real hard part of COVID right now is the amount of, we're all video producers. Mm-hmm. You do a concert and there's 5 different things that happened before, and then afterwards there's 5 different things that happen to get the video out. It all takes time away from the music. And right now I'm even this moment, I have concerts coming up and I'm nervous because I haven't done it for 8 months. I haven't really conducted for so long. And now, people are talking, everybody's watching, everybody can see everything. So there's more pressure and there's less time. So for me, that's the number one thing, is just keeping conducting number one. And how I'm able to do that, how I balance those, we'll see. We'll talk in 5 years. Over the next 10 years, what I think is going to be really interesting is to see how the industry adapts. We were always sort of thought of as the industry that couldn't change. And there's sort of a comfort in that, because then when you try something that doesn't quite work or change is hard, you can say, oh, well, it's orchestra. Change is so hard. But we did a little bit. And now it's like, okay, now we're all producing movies 8 months later, and we're doing chamber music, and there's different agreements with different groups that are happening. So we have less of an excuse to not be adaptable. And the adaptations that I'm looking forward to seeing are us taking our music, both the content of our music being more reflective of the community, and also the context that we do it being more reflective of the innovation that's widely available in many different sectors throughout the world, but now being applied to orchestra. So innovation and an applicability of content, which is what you said before, that really reflects the community. So that the program that you make at Okanagan Symphony could not work in Guelph, because it's just way too local, way too invested. There's too many relationships happening. It's just like, oh, we'd have to start all over. And as a result of that, this is like just the last little thing, as everything became sort of democratized, right? If you have 2 different orchestras performing, say me performing with Kitchener, let's make it different. Andre Feher conducting Kitchener, and whoever conducting Berlin. So you can see 2 different orchestras playing the same piece. Berlin Phil versus any orchestra in Canada. Berlin Phil, really good orchestra. Why wouldn't you just watch Berlin Phil if they're, so to speak, better? But if you have a relationship with the musicians, if, for example, as with the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, you've had personalized concerts going out to care homes where people are there, you've known those musicians since you were a kid, of course you're going to cheer for your home team. I mean, people cheer for the Maple Leafs, right? Of course they're going to like stick with
I
their.
still do.
Yeah, and it's as a Calgarian, it's a mystery. But you have that emotional, relational connection with your actual orchestra. I want to see my friends play. Sure, maybe, and you know what I'm like. You know what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
there will be aspects of other orchestras, things that they may do better, But that's not the point. That's not the point. And even when we get it really comes to splitting hairs things, to be quite honest, but that's a whole other discussion. I want to see my orchestra because there's a pride in that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's gonna keep us going. And I think it's better. I think it's just better. And I'm actually kind of proud of us, what we've done and the direction we're going.
Well, you have every reason to be. I'm so inspired by the work that you're doing, Dan, and the work that you have always done. And I'm just really grateful that you're getting the platform to let it shine, and for so many of us to be able to see the possibilities that you have created and to imagine them for ourselves in our own organizations. I'm immensely proud of any tiny part I played in helping you just shine. Truly, like what you're doing is so exhilarating to see, and it gives me great hope for the future of our industry, the future of our art form, that we will continue to evolve and we will continue to find ways of being more relevant than ever. As you said at the very beginning, sharing the gift of music and live music with so many different people to make our communities stronger and to make our world a sunnier place for everybody. It's just been a great joy to spend this time with you. I don't see any specific questions other than where can we access the documentary? But I do see that someone loved when you said music is for people. People aren't for music, because that really resonated for me as well. Just such a joy to have you with us. And I look forward to continuing the conversation. I can't wait to have you in our community and sharing the stage. And let's dream of some really spectacular things that we can do together with you here.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody for joining us today on the second of our Maestros Musings. It's my new Oprah hat that I'm putting on, which is a real joy.
Really
A lot of fun. So many things that we could have talked about further, Daniel, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do that again. Our next session for this series is on April the 22nd, when I'll be speaking with Dina Gilbert, who's the relatively new music director of the Kamloops Symphony from Quebec, and she and I are going to talk about how women are taking over on the podium.
Yeah.
So there you go.
It's really good. Sorry, that's a whole. I won't interrupt. But I think
It's not an interruption. Please, you're the guest. Have another word.
It's really great to see more. So many of my most influential music directors were women. Nicole Haycock, Pat Heitman, Mallory Thomson. These were like those women that were the most for me growing up. So it's so great, and we just need more. So just go. And Rose, I think you're tremendous in that regard. And also there's the Toronto Star article that just came out that Rose and I are both in.
I almost forgot to mention it. Thank you.
Yeah, that article came out today, and I could probably find it and put it in the chat.
I think it's on our Facebook page already. Is it, Geraldine?
Okay.
Yeah. So there's Keith Johnston interviewed me and Daniel and Jana Saylor and Gordon Gerard, who's a dear friend of both of ours, and it's about how conductors are adapting in COVID. And so it was great timing that it came out this morning when I was about to have my conversation with you, and then I forgot to talk about it.
Oh my gosh, I have to say something. So yes. Annette Lagrang is here.
Annette Lagrange, yeah.
Did I say it right? Lagrange?
Lagrange.
Okay, I don't have it here. That led to the development of the Master of Teaching program at the University of Calgary. So nice to hear a reference to your placement with the John Howard Society community-based programs. So the whole thing, I have to say, so Annette, thank you, because this is like the fruit of that program, right? Because it wasn't just like classroom. So the whole program was, you teach in the community, but you also can be a teacher and just to open up eyes. And that's kind of where that's part of what this all is about. And me as a teacher in the community, the whole community ambassador thing is really community teacher for music. So Annette, thank you. It's so interesting seeing the seeds planted. So when you watch the documentary and you see that prison concert portion of it, know that is like literally directly because of the Master Teaching program at the University of Calgary. Thank you.
Annette's daughter-in-law, Olivia, plays cello in our orchestra.
Wow.
So that's very, very cool. That's really thank you. I just want to close by saying conducting is about leadership. But what I love about your conducting career, Dan, is that you didn't come, no conductor comes in one way, right? We all come at it from different ways.
Mhm.
But I love that you were a teacher first, because that shines through everything that you're doing. And I think that if we can look at conducting in that way, as a sharing of knowledge and a sharing of experiences and teaching others how they can elevate your life, rather than this idea of the great maestro who knows all, right? And I just think that you're the epitome of that. It's such a joy to have you with us today. And so excited to just see what we can dream up together, and to watch all the other wonderful projects that you're doing. I'm going to go watch the documentary again today. I'm super proud of you.
Rosemary.
And thank you all for joining us. Hope we'll see you back again on April 22nd. Daniel Bartholomew-Poyser, everybody.
Take
Take care.